3 very scary. Alone watching the horror movie Horror Stories. It was one of those nights, you know the kind. The world outside swallowed whole by the darkness, and the only light is the flickering glow of the TV. I'd been craving a good horror movie, one that would keep me up all night, one that would make me check every corner of my apartment, every shadow in the hall. I wanted that spine-tingling fear, that feeling of being watched, even when I knew I was alone. I grabbed some popcorn, settled into the couch, and pressed play. At first, everything felt normal. A group of friends, laughing, exploring an old, creepy house. Classic horror. The kind where you know things are about to go wrong, but you don't mind. It's all part of the fun. I settled in thinking I'd have a good time, but then something felt off. The tension. It wasn't just in the movie. It crept into my own skin. The music swelled, but it felt too loud, too real. The air in the room, heavy, too quiet, too still. I glanced toward the window. The moonlight filtered through the blinds, casting shadows that looked wrong. They shifted, stretched just a little too far. I shook my head, trying to focus on the movie. It was just my imagination. But then, it happened. The characters in the movie were upstairs in the old house, creeping down a dark hallway. I could feel it. The way the shadows seemed to grow. The way the walls seemed to close in. My breath quickened. Every creak in the movie, every whisper, felt like it was happening right here, in my living room. The characters stopped, frozen. One of them, in a shaky voice, whispered, "Did you hear that?" I paused the movie, heart racing. I swear, for a split second I heard it. A soft, almost imperceptible sound just behind me. A creak. A door opening? I turned my head quickly, my pulse pounding in my ears. But there was nothing there. Just the quiet hum of my fridge. I breathed a sigh of relief, though I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The movie continued, but my mind wasn't there anymore. It was elsewhere. The characters started hearing strange noises in the house, things slamming shut, footsteps that echoed through the halls. I felt the fear rising in my chest. Was it just the movie? Or was something else happening? Suddenly, the lights in the living room flickered. I froze. Was it just the bulb? Or was something else wrong? I stood up, looking around. The room was still. The flicker had stopped, but the air felt colder, heavy. I turned around, trying to shake off the unease. And then, knock. I jumped, my heart racing. The sound came from the hallway. I felt my throat tighten. Knock, knock. It was slow, deliberate. I couldn't move. I just stood there, eyes locked on the hallway. My phone buzzed on the couch, pulling me out of the trance. I rushed over to it, hands shaking. The message was from an unknown number. "I see you." I dropped the phone, the screen lighting up in the darkness, casting eerie shadows on the wall. "I see you." The words echoed in my head. My mind was spinning. I rushed to the hallway, my breath shallow. My hand reached for the light switch. As I flicked it on, the light flooded the hallway, and I saw it. The kitchen door, slightly ajar. Had I left it like that? I felt a chill crawl down my spine. No, I hadn't. I was sure of it. I walked toward it, my footsteps sounding unnervingly loud in the silence. My hand was trembling as I reached for the handle. Click. I opened it. The kitchen was empty. Nothing seemed out of place. But there, on the counter, my phone. I picked it up. The screen was cracked. And the message. It was still there. But now, there was more. Another text. This one sent after the first. "You shouldn't have looked." My stomach twisted into knots. Shouldn't have looked. What was happening? I looked around the kitchen again. The silence was thick, almost suffocating. I turned to the living room, and that's when I saw it. The TV. It was no longer showing the movie, just static. the fuzzy, grainy noise that filled the room. I didn't touch the remote. I hadn't even moved it. But there it was, static, covering the screen. But then, through the fuzz, something caught my eye. A figure, in the static. It wasn't clear at first, just a blur of black in the screen. But slowly, it sharpened. A shape. Tall. Thin. It stood there, watching. I froze. I couldn't move. My chest felt tight. I knew I should look away, but I couldn't. My body was frozen. And then, the voice. Not from the TV, not from the movie. A whisper, software cold. Look behind you. My breath hitched. I didn't want to turn around, but I had to. My body betrayed me. I turned, slowly. And there in the corner of the room was the figure. It was just standing there, unmoving, silent. I wanted to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. The figure was taller than I remembered. Its face was hidden, but I could feel its eyes, staring, watching. I backed away, heart hammering in my chest. I turned toward the door, ready to run. But when I reached for the doorknob, it wouldn't turn. It was stuck. I pulled harder, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Why wasn't it opening? Behind me, the whisper came again. Closer now. You can't leave. I jerked my head toward the figure. It was still there, standing, but now it was closer. So close I could feel the cold, like it was seeping into my bones. I needed to get out of there. I needed to leave. But no matter what I did, the door wouldn't open. And then just like that, the figure was gone. I turned around, my heart pounding. The room felt empty, but I wasn't alone. I could feel it. The air was thick, heavy with dread. The lights flickered again, just for a moment. But it wasn't over. The TV blinked back on. Static. But now the words flashed across the screen, clear as day. It's not over. I didn't know how much time passed after that. I just knew I couldn't stay there any longer. I ran, out of the apartment, into the night. My mind racing with fear, my heart beating in my ears. The whispers followed me. The voice, growing louder with every step. And I still hear it. Every night. It doesn't end. This is Unsettling. Alone watching the horror movie Horror Story number 2. It was just another quiet Friday night. Nothing special, no plans, no one else around. It was just me and the silence of my house. My cozy little haven, well, or so I thought. I grabbed my blanket, wrapped it tightly around my shoulders, and sank into the couch. The house felt emptier than usual, the kind of empty that feels like it's echoing. But I didn't mind, at least not yet. I flicked through my streaming service, the usual mix of titles blurring together until one caught my eye. A supernatural thriller. Perfect. It had all the usual spooky tropes, an old house, a stormy night, and people who probably shouldn't be there. I clicked on it. The movie started, and for a moment I was lost in it. The sound of wind howling, the flicker of old lights, every creak in the background added to the suspense. It was one of those films that made you feel like you weren't just watching it. You were in it. The characters walked into the house. The tension was already thick. I leaned forward, my heart rate picking up with every step they took. The house seemed to groan in the silence like it was alive. I couldn't help but shiver as the camera panned across their surroundings, the dim lighting, the abandoned furniture, the layers of dust. Every corner seemed to hide something, waiting to jump out at you. I glanced around my own room, suddenly aware of the shadows. The lights in the movie flickered, just like the ones in my living room. I told myself it was nothing. It's just the film, I murmured under my breath, trying to reassure myself. But then it happened. The TV flickered. I paused. The screen didn't just glitch, it warped. The colors shifted unnaturally. First it was red, then black, and then back to the usual gray tones. My stomach tightened. I stared at the screen. The images looked strange, almost out of place. I blinked. Maybe it was a connection issue. Maybe it was just a weird glitch. But then, I saw it. A shadow. It wasn't supposed to be there. I froze. My chest tightened. My eyes scanned the screen, and I swear the shadow moved across the room, as though it had weight, like it was alive. It wasn't part of the movie. It was real. My throat tightened, and I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Calm down, I whispered to myself. It's just a glitch. Nothing more. I tried to shake it off, but the uneasy feeling crawled up my spine and lingered. I shifted uncomfortably on the couch. I glanced around the room expecting something to be there, but no. Just the shadows in my living room, just the quiet hum of the refrigerator. Nothing. But the feeling wouldn't go away. I looked back at the TV. The shadow was gone, but it had been there. I wasn't imagining it. There was something wrong with the atmosphere in here. Too heavy. Too real. I let out a shaky breath, trying to calm myself down. It's nothing. Just the movie. It's all in your head, I repeated. But my words sounded hollow. I couldn't shake the creeping sense that something was watching me. The characters were now at the basement door in the film, the camera angle low, following their every move. My heart pounded as they slowly crept down the stairs, their flashlights casting eerie shadows. Every creak of the wooden steps seemed to echo in my own house. It was like the line between the movie and my reality had blurred. Suddenly, the lights in my living room flickered. Not again. I sat up straighter, my eyes darting to the ceiling light, which now swayed lightly as though stirred by an unseen breeze. The room seemed colder, the shadows stretching across the walls. I couldn't breathe. I turned to look at the hallway again. There was something in the corner of my vision, just beyond the light. It wasn't the movie anymore. It was something in my house. My house. The TV flickered again, but this time, it wasn't the usual glitch. The shadow appeared again, but it wasn't just on the screen this time. It seemed closer, as if it was leaning out from the screen, trying to reach through the screen to get to me. My throat closed up. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. I was stuck. My mind screamed at me to turn off the TV, to break free, but my body was frozen in place. Then I heard it. A soft, gentle knock. It was so faint at first that I thought it was part of the movie. I strained my ears. It was real. Someone was knocking at my door. But who would be here? No one was supposed to come over tonight. The knock came again. Louder. More urgent. I felt a cold sweat break out on my skin. My heartbeat was pounding in my ears. There was no way it could be anyone. I hadn't invited anyone over, and it was well past midnight. Who would come now? I stood up, my legs shaking beneath me. My heart hammered in my chest as I slowly walked toward the door, each step feeling like it took longer than the last. The knocking continued, growing louder, more insistent. My fingers gripped the doorknob, trembling. Before I could open the door, the knocking stopped. I hesitated. Should I open it? My breath caught in my throat. I reached for the doorknob again, but before I could twist it, I stopped. A strange, unsettling feeling washed over me. I stepped back. My mind was racing. What should I do? What if it was someone in need of help? But as I stood there, the air around me grew colder. A whisper, so soft, so faint, suddenly crept through the stillness. I told you, you're not alone? I froze. I couldn't move. The words, they felt so close. Too close. I turned back to the TV, but it wasn't just the screen now. It was the room around me, the shadows creeping in, the silence pressing down on me like a weight. My breath came out in shallow gasps, and I quickly grabbed the door handle, yanking it open. Nothing. No one. But the note. A small crumpled piece of paper lay on the doorstep. I bent down, my hands shaking as I unfolded it, the words staring up at me. You're not alone. The cold fear swept through me, deeper than before, locking me in place. My heart was in my throat, and for the first time, I wasn't sure if the terror was coming from the movie or the world around me. I slammed the door shut, locking it quickly. The house felt suffocating. Every shadow, every flicker of light felt like it was closing in on me. Then the whisper came again, as if it were right behind me. I told you, you're not alone. This is Most Creepy. Alone watching the horror movie Horror Story number 3. I've always been a fan of horror movies. The kind that makes your skin crawl, that keeps you on the edge of your seat. It's strange, isn't it? Wanting to feel fear, but at the same time, knowing you're safe. It's a thrill I can't quite explain. But tonight felt different. I just moved into this new apartment a few days ago. It's not much, small, cozy, and a little quiet, but it's mine. I like it that way. It's been a while since I've had a place all to myself. No roommates, no interruptions. Just peace. I was settling in for the night. It had been a long, exhausting day. I didn't feel like going out. Didn't feel like talking to anyone. Just wanted to relax. So I grabbed some takeout, poured myself a glass of wine, and plopped down on the couch, ready to scroll through the endless list of movies. Eventually, something caught my eye. The Silent Picture. A horror film. New. The reviews were mixed. Some people loved it, others said it was a complete waste of time. That's usually when I find something interesting. I figured, why not? I dimmed the lights, took a sip of wine, and hit play. At first, it seemed like a normal horror movie. A lonely woman, in a dimly lit apartment, sitting on her couch. You know the drill, the typical start. She's flipping through channels, nothing interesting, just bored. Her eyes seemed distant, lost. But there was something eerie about the way the scene was shot. It wasn't like other movies. The silence, it was heavy, thick, like you could feel it pressing in around you. The woman on screen, she looked tired, pale. Her eyes were wide, but not in fear. Just vacant. I couldn't look away. I was drawn in by the weird calmness of it all. And then, the TV flickered. What the? I blinked. The screen went black for a split second. I checked the cable, the settings on the TV. Everything seemed fine. Maybe just a glitch? I shrugged it off. But as the screen came back to life, the woman was standing now, facing the screen. Her movements were slow, deliberate, like she was waiting for something. She reached off screen, grabbing something. A photo? Her fingers hovered over it for a second, and just as I was about to turn away, I saw it. A shadow. It was standing behind her, just out of her sight. Tall, thin, almost invisible. But it was there. My breath caught in my throat. I leaned forward, eyes glued to the screen. Was it part of the movie? Was this some kind of trick? I had to be imagining things. But the figure? It didn't move. It just stood there, unblinking. The woman turned, her back still to the figure. I was praying she wouldn't look behind her. But then she did. Her face paled. Her expression faltered. But it wasn't just fear on her face. It was recognition. Oh God, my heart hammered. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling. Something wasn't right. Something is wrong with this movie. And then the lights in my apartment flickered. My stomach twisted. A power surge? A glitch? No, something was off. The woman on the screen was still standing there, the figure behind her still lurking, waiting. It was almost as if she didn't notice it. But I did, didn't I? Knock. I froze. A sound. A knock. It came from the door. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Knock. Knock. It echoed in the quiet apartment, and for a second, everything felt wrong. My heart was racing. My palms were sweaty. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the door, even though I knew. I knew I had to. I stood slowly, my legs shaking. My heart was pounding in my chest. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. The TV, the knocking, everything felt too real. When I reached the door, I didn't even want to look through the peephole, but I did. I had to. Nothing. The hallway was empty. My breath escaped me in a shaky exhale. I was just being paranoid. I shut the door. But the moment I turned back to the screen, it was worse. The woman on screen wasn't moving anymore. She was staring right at me. Her eyes wide, her lips parted like she was about to say something. I waited, breathless, hanging on every second. But then, nothing. She wasn't speaking. She wasn't moving. It was like she was frozen. And then, the figure. It moved. Closer. It was right behind her now, so close that I could see the outline of its tall frame. It reached out, its hand brushing against her shoulder. Oh God, no. The woman didn't turn. She couldn't. But the figure was there. It was there, right behind her. The lights flickered again. Knock. I heard it again. The knock. But this time it wasn't from the door. It came from somewhere in the room, somewhere behind me. I whipped around, my heart slamming in my chest, my eyes wild. Nothing. Nothing was there. I stumbled back to the couch, trying to steady my breath, trying to figure out what was happening. My phone. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking so much I could barely unlock it. The screen went black. My phone. It was dead. I tried to turn it on. I pressed the power button again and again. Nothing. The woman on the screen, she was moving now. She turned slowly, her face contorting with something. Fear. And then, the shadow. It was right in front of her. Right there. Her eyes widened in terror. Her mouth opened to scream, but no sound came out. I was gasping for air. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, the darkness closing in. Suddenly, the lights flickered out. Everything went black. The TV was silent now. The room was silent. And I was sitting there in the dark, alone. Except I wasn't. I wasn't alone. The whisper came again. Low. Software. Get out. Get out. I felt the breath leave my lungs. My body froze. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. My heart was racing so fast I thought I might pass out. I wasn't watching a movie anymore. I was in it. The whisper came again. And then the lights flickered once more, just for a second. And when they came back on, the screen was black. And the figure behind me, it was standing right there,